Replaced magneto and still no spark.
Hello. My name is I'm going to assist you with this. Do the voltage check of the magneto again, and let me know what you get.
Hank, I'm the guy you were working with, the flywheel with the magnets that were reglued. I will give you the model and serial number again in case you need it. Model 2.8 FA26100K spec K serial, G04066830 Put the new magneto on today and tested, 5 volts while cranking at coil primary. Disconnected the oil switch, no change. Will retest tomorrow. Could those magnets have been glued on wrong? Maybe something missing. The guy I took this to for repair is on SmokStak and his name is he had the genset for over 3 months and said due to health he cannot repair. When took to him it would start and run only with the start switch held down but with no electrical voltage from generator. When picked up he said it had a weak spark, and the magnets came apart from the flywheel and stuck to what he called a pickup coil. Did he mean magneto? I don't know. He also said something about residue on the rotor assembly which he said he cleaned off. I do not trust the guy on anything he has said or said he has done. He's respected as an expert on SmokStak with over 11,000 posts. I thought I was taking this generator to one of the best mechanics around. Need to start over and find problem with spark and then proceed to the no electrical output. While he had the generator I ordered a new VR from Flight Systems and had it delivered to his shop. Hank, respect your expertise, I hope we can solve these problems. I can send you a picture of the flywheel if necessary, we'll need to take apart again. We'll retest tomorrow, positive lead to coil primary wire and black lead to black ground on coil. Crank. 5 volts. I am still wondering if the flywheel magnets are the problem. If anyone can isolate this and figure it out, you can.
As far as the magnets being glued in wrong, I am not sure if that is even possible. I personally have never tried to reattach a magnet, I just don't trust it. But as far as the magnet being broken making a difference, it will not. The strength of magnetism is measured in a unit called Gauss. Gauss is affected by many things, such as the material the magnet is made out of, the magnetizing process used, and the physical size of the magnet. If you were to stack several magnets together, observing proper polarity, the resulting Gauss would actually be higher than if you had a single magnet of the same size as the complete stack. It would be nearly impossible to glue the two halves of your magnet to be glued backwards. As to increase the Gauss, the magnets must be lane positive to negative, just like trying to increase the voltage of batteries. We all know that opposites attract. By laying the magnets positive to negative, they will actually pull themselves together, making them very easy to glue into place. But if someone were to try and put them positive to positive, the natural tendency of the magnets would be to push each other away, making it difficult, if not impossible, to glue together. The bad thing is that there are only the 3 components in the ignition system, the flywheel/magnet, the magneto and the coil. Well, okay, 4 if you count the spark plug. There is another thing that can cause low voltage, though, and that is if the engine is cranking too slow. Does it seem to be cranking unusually slow, or at its normal speed? I have never seen this happen before, so did not think about it until just now, but when you had it apart, did you check the shutdown wire to make sure it is not shorted to ground somewhere? For Billy, I know him personally. He actually is a great genset guy. He retired from Onan. But I do know his health is taking him down. I wanted to get down to see him when I was in Texas in February, but just didn't have the time. I'm hoping to have the time this coming February, as I'm hunting only about 2 hours from him.
Hank, well, as usual, I shoot myself in the foot. I am not saying that Billy is a bad guy, but I am saying that I brought the generator home with more problems than I had when I brought it to him. In my opinion, the right/moral/ethical thing to do would have been to at least return the generator in the same shape as it was when I took it to him. However, I brought it home in worse shape, and I am not sure he is being totally honest on what happened. When I took it to him, the engine would turn over and run, but only with the start button held down, and the genset was not producing power. The second you release the start button, the engine would die. Returned with weak/no spark, and the magnet story of how they came off and were glued back on. This is where I am. Replace the magneto and still only 5 volts at primary while cranking. Engine is turning over at full speed and battery is completely charged. Where is the engine kill wire you are talking about? Also, if this was the problem, would it still draw 5 volts while cranking? Something happened between my house and him working on it. The magneto has a ground wire that is attached to the mounting bolts, a wire going out of the magneto and attached to wiring harness, and another wire from the harness that attaches to a bottom connector on the magneto itself. I apologize if I angered you about Billy. I speak the truth as I see it, and I only want to get this thing running so my family, my scout troop, and my sons can return to using it. It has been out of commission for over a year now. I am short on funds and I am trying to get it running with your help. I thank you for your help and advise and trust your opinion. Are you sure the gap between the magnets and the magneto could not be causing the problem? I hope and pray it is not the problem because I don't want to spend $300. Thanks, Hank.
I understood what you meant about Billy, I did not take it the wrong way. And I do agree that it should have come back to you in at least as good shape as when you took it to him. I am having a very hard time understanding how that magnet broke in the first place. I have taken apart hundreds of these units, and have never seen a magnet break. I have seen the flywheel itself break once, and have seen a few with strip teeth, but never a broken magnet. Air gap is a factor, yes, but the air gap is not adjustable on this unit. About the only way that the air gap could be too large would be if the magnet sheared, a layer came off, which would result in the magnet being too far from the magneto. Since the air gap is not adjustable, there is not published spec for it. But I can tell you that .010 is pretty much a de facto standard on all engines, including this one. You might try measuring it out and see what you get. I am doing everything I can to avoid having you to purchase another flywheel. I do understand the money thing, why well. The kill wire is the small wire that plugs into the magneto. It leads directly to the controller.
Hank, how do you measure air gap since the flywheel must be on? Do you mark it somehow? Also, should I take the set apart again tomorrow and trace the wires? Which one would you say is the ground wire? One wire is built into the magneto and attaches to the harness. The other wire comes from the harness and attaches to a pin on the magneto. I think the kill wire runs to the control. I want you to know that I only said the best things of Billy on SmokStak. I really think he felt bad about this. I praised him to all, and thanked him for his efforts. No use leaving bridges burning. This is a private help site and I really feel differently, but Christ taught compassion and encouraged it. I need to be better, much better, but I tried and still try. I'm just frustrated because I pictured us at the lake on Labor Day with the RV AC running and, well, you know. If you suggest, I will tear the set down again. Please let me know how to check that air gap with a flywheel covering everything up. Thanks, Hank.
From the magneto, the wire that comes out and attaches to the harness is the wire that goes to the coil. The shutdown wire attaches to the magneto. It is doubtful that it has a short to ground, though, or it most likely wouldn't even have 5 volts. As I said, I'm just trying to do everything I can to keep you from having to replace the flywheel. To be honest, measuring air gap is probably going to be very, very difficult. It has to be done with everything assembled, and I am not sure how you would even get a feeler gauge in there. I've never had to try.
Hank, the shutdown wire from the magneto, according to the schematic in the service manual, P128, is called an enable output and it goes from the magneto to P24 of the control harness. Is there an ohms test for this or do I just trace from the magneto to the connection? It simply runs from the magneto through a harness under the stator housing to the control. Should I unplug from magneto or unplug from P2, or just verify that it is not damaged? Also, the troubleshooting mentions that a bad low oil switch can ground spark. Was told this unit does not have one, but I verified by looking at the oil pan. There is a black wire encased with a white sheath coming out of the oil pan. The schematic for this model also clearly shows this switch. Should I unplug this wire and run the test? In all honesty, Hank, and be truthful with me, I do not understand why the 5 volts if anything is wrong other than the flywheel issue. It seems if there were a problem other than the flywheel I would get no voltage at cranking. You are the expert and I trust you. I will run the test based on what you suggest from this post. I have gotten down to tearing the general side down to under 20 minutes. I know an air gap of 0.10 is like a sheet of paper. I can see gluing those magnets could be an issue without instructions or pictures on how to do it. Onan sells a magnet kit with proper adhesive for about $90.00. I tried to call them and ask if this included the proper procedures for installation. Cummins/Onan people are very rude here and have told me they have limited parts and service people and they do not have the time to help lay people fix their generators. If I could find a unit that would fit in our small RV I would buy it and never deal with Onan again. I really despise their attitude and lack of common courtesy. But I am stuck with them and their machine, sorry to rant.
The shutdown wire from the magneto, according to the schematic in the service manual, P128, is called an enable output and it goes from the magneto to P24 of the control harness. Is there an ohms test for this or do I just trace from the magneto to the connection? It simply runs from the magneto through a harness under the stator housing to the control. Should I unplug from magneto or unplug from P2, or just verify that it is not damaged? Yes, Onan calls this the ignition enable wire. The reason being is that the controller grounds this wire out to shut down the ignition. As long as the controller holds a relay that is built into the controller open, and not grounded, the ignition is enabled. We know the wire is not broken, or you would get 0 voltage. Simply ohming the wire itself will do no good. What we are looking for is thin/cracked insulation, which an ohm test most likely would not pick up anyhow, unless it happens to be shorted to ground. You could try ohming the wire to ground, with the connector removed from the controller. Remember, the controller has to open a relay to enable it, so with the relay closed, it definitely is grounded through the controller. But the best thing is to physically inspect the wire for damage. Look for cracks, burnt spots, melted insulation, etc. Also, the troubleshooting mentions that a bad low oil switch can ground spark. Was told this unit does not have one, but I verified by looking at the oil pan. There is a black wire encased with a white sheath coming out of the oil pan. The schematic for this model also clearly shows this switch. Should I unplug this wire and run the test? Yes, there is a low oil level switch on this unit. You certainly will not hurt anything by unplugging it to test, but the switch is either open or closed, there is no in between. If the switch were closed, you would get zero voltage from the magneto, so the switch is not suspect. In all honesty, Hank, and be truthful with me, I do not understand why the 5 volts if anything is wrong other than the flywheel issue. It seems if there were a problem other than the flywheel I would get no voltage at cranking. You are the expert and I trust you. I will run the tests based on what you suggest from this post. I have gotten down to tearing the general side down to under 20 minutes. I'm being honest with you, too. Everything is pointing to a bad flywheel/magnet, but as I said, I am trying to rule out everything else, to keep you from having to buy one. Unfortunately, other than maybe checking the air gap, there is no test for the flywheel. You rule out everything else, and if nothing is found, then you have no choice but to replace the flywheel. I know an air gap of 0.10 is like a sheet of paper. I can see gluing those magnets could be an issue without instructions or pictures on how to do it. Onan sells a magnet kit with proper adhesive for about 90.00. I tried to call them and ask if this included the proper procedures for installation. Comment/Onan people are very rude here and have told me they have limited parts and service people and they do not have the time to help lay people fix their generators. If I could find a unit that would fit in our small RV, I would buy it and never deal with Onan again. I really despise their attitude and lack of common courtesy. But, I am stuck with them and their machine, sorry to rant. Actually, a sheet of regular notebook paper is more like 0.003, not 0.010. A standard business card is much closer to 0.010. But I still prefer to use a feeler gauge. For the magnet kit, I have heard of them, but have never used them, so I really can't tell you what the procedures say. For the Cummins/Onan people in your area, trust me, it is not just your area. I am actually a dealer. When I have an issue I cannot figure out, my procedure is to call my distributor, which happens to be in Louisville. The guy that used to be the service manager was sharp. I tried to stump him several times, but never was able to. He knew his stuff. But when he retired, I wouldn't give you a wooden nickel for the guy that replaced him. I can call, and he never returns my calls. If I get lucky enough to get hold of him, he never has a clue about what I am asking, and he is supposed to be the factory rep. I only have to call once every couple of years, but you would think that the factory reps would know their stuff. I got to the point where I didn't even call him anymore, I would just call the distribution center in Nashville or Indy. But the last time I called Indy, I kind of got chewed out for not calling my assigned distributor, so I told Onan exactly why I wouldn't call Louisville. I flat out told them the guy was an idiot. That was about 2 years ago, and I haven't had to call them back since, so I don't know what my current status is with them. But I can tell you that in August I had 2 units brought to me that had both been to Cummins, Louisville, and neither got fixed. I found a bad fuel pump on one, and the other had an incorrect muffler installed, which caused both magnetos to overheat. The one with the magnetos, The guy in Louisville Flat told the customer that he must have an internal engine problem, and will need a new genset. I put two $30 magnetos and a $160 muffler on it. With labor, his bill was a tad less than $500. I don't know about where you are from, but here in Kentucky, $500 is a whole lot less than $5,600 for a new unit. And this is the Cummins people. As far as finding a different unit, you are out of luck there. Generac got out of the RV genset business 2 years ago, and right now, Onan is the only one making them. Hank will probably be sad. Before I can tear this down again, I was just wondering with your connections if you could produce a picture of this flywheel from the inside showing the magnets? Wondering when glued on if spacing, the glue, could be affecting the air gap? We know it is producing 5 volts but far short of the 15 to 60. I know I am grasping at straws here. I also know it really does not matter now, but still curious. Do you have any sources for finding a used flywheel? I have looked on eBay and Craigslist. I found a whole unit on eBay that is a spec G. I think it runs, but poorly. Owner wants $299 plus another $100 to ship. Wondering if I could get him down on the price. I was also thinking this model, if it would cross to mine, would be good for the electrical problem once the spark is fixed. Thinking I could use the rotor and stator and other parts down the road. I am untrusting of used things, especially electrical, but the flywheel would seem to work. What do you think, Hank? If you have source for used parts, I would rather you get me a flywheel. When spark is restored, I still have a no electrical output from the generator problem. Engine runs but only with the start button held down, and then no electrical power. So I hope you can help me run down this after the spark is restored. Again, very frustrating. Here's one for a laugh. I received an email from M&D Lawn and Appliance. They told me according to their parts diagram the magnets come pre-glued to a plate that rivets onto the flywheel. Price, $504.28, which is $200 more than a complete flywheel with magnets. This does seem to answer the air gap question, but does not answer the question of Onan supplying magnets and adhesive with their kit. This kit lists for $95. The more I look at this, the more confused I get. Just trying to figure this out, just for the sake of it. What do you think of all this? I thought about emailing them on their source for this information, and why someone would buy this and fool with it when a new flywheel is $200 cheaper. Probably just hack them off though. The one on eBay is listed by Jeff Lind. It is a spec. Would you mind looking at it and telling me what you think and also what you would pay? Also, any way to verify how much of a spec G would cross over to my spec K? Thanks again, Hank. Saturday will be no problem. Unfortunately, I do not have a photo of this flywheel. It is ironic, though, in that the last several units I have torn down, I have started taking a lot of pictures of the unit as it is coming apart. I just have not torn down a KY since then. Even so, the magnets are not something I would have even thought to have taken a picture of, but you can bet I will when I tear down another KY now. The Spec G unit uses a different flywheel than your Spec K unit. I honestly don't know what the difference is, as I've never had a need to compare them. I really don't know any places that sell used parts, but I'm sure there are some out there. I never even look at M&D when looking for parts, they are always twice as high as anyone else. I'm sure it is a small mom and pop shop.
Hank, you are so right about M&D, emailed me on Flywheel price, 500.00. Very scary when an internet parts shop is more expensive than the dealer is. I wonder if they realize that. We'll tear down SAT. I have a feeling that wire is going to be good. What do you think? Once question Hank as I learn more and more about Onan Incorporated. My unit goes at least through spec K. I am not sure when they stopped the process in the alphabet. I know they have recently upgraded the KV and have a new model. How do you know the changes in the specs down the alphabet for a certain model? Were these changes made to improve it? Again, just curious about this. Thanks for the info. About that spec G, would have been worthless to mess with it. Onan dealer in Fort Worth says shipping for a new flywheel will be 30.00. I do not understand why they do this when they receive parts inventory every day from the warehouse. Any way to get around the shipping thing seems to be a rip-off to me.
I honestly don't think the wire will be the problem, but as I promised you, we are going to rule out everything else before you have to touch the flywheel. And that wire is the last thing. For the spec changes, anytime there is an engineering change, or a part supplier change, the spec changes. For example, on one series of genset, a spec F had points type ignition, but going to the spec G you will find electronic ignition. On another series, the only difference between a spec C and a spec D is that the spec C had a Zenith carburetor, but the spec D went to a Walbro. A lot of the changes, I do not even know what they are, maybe a different supplier for the screws? The KV series currently goes up to a spec M. The KV has gone through some major design changes in its lifetime. This is why I have to ask for the specific model number of the genset when I am helping people. I need to know exactly which unit they have, so I can properly help them. It doesn't make me look good if I tell them to check the points, if their unit doesn't even have points on it. I am an Onan dealer, so I can just log into the dealer portal on Onan's website to see which particular spec has which components. I also have a very extensive collection of manuals, for dozens of brands of gensets. The only way I know of to get around the shipping thing is to go to the store in person. And then they have to have it in stock. I really do not like Cummins/Onan shipping policy. I can order a gasket the size of a silver dollar, about $3, and instead of dropping it in an envelope between two pieces of cardboard in an envelope, where they could mail it for about $1, they will put it in a 1 cubic foot box, pack it full of paper, and charge me about $10 for shipping. Hank, I did not get to the tear down on Saturday. We'll do it today. While in there, can you think of anything else to look at? I sure hate to buy that flywheel. I will be out over 500.00 over all this and still have the same problem as before. I was reading the biography of Cockey's the Great Apache Chief. He was renowned, even by his enemies, for his honesty and character. Two things can cause those magnets to come off: rust or blunt force trauma. No rust on this genset anywhere, so must have dropped the genset or the flywheel. I am angry, but we'll have to get over this as one of those many dings on the road of life. I will let you know what I find. My wife is giving me trouble with the cost of the flywheel. Are you sure you can't get a picture of this thing through Onan? I know we will have a comparison after we buy a new one, but it would be good to see what these things look like. I know you have done all you can do, just seeing if you have access to some diagrams or pictures before we buy. The wire is the last thing there is. If the wire is good, it has to be the flywheel. I don't think even rust would cause the magnets to come off. The flywheel is aluminum, and it doesn't rust. The magnets are large enough that it would take a couple lifetimes for them to rust enough to come off. No, I have no way that I know of to get a picture of the flywheel, without having to tear a genset down.
Hank, one last thing and we'll close this out until I buy the flywheel and restore proper spark. Then, I will contact you again to help me figure out why no electrical power from genset. This is mainly for my wife's sake and to show her. She has read all the posts, but remains stubborn, I guess because she will be helping pay for the flywheel, which is a lot of money on waitress pay. She went with me to buy the new magneto and I showed her how the flywheel passes over the magneto to produce spark. She felt how strong the magnets are for their size. What do you suggest I tell her? Magnets glued on wrong. Wrong magnets. She knows the engine was running great before, now no spark, 90.00 for magneto and now needing a flywheel. I know the answer is speculation, but something has to be wrong with those magnets or placement of them, right? I will show her your reply and hope this will convince her. Tough girl, but scraping change off tables is not for the weak of heart, especially when close to half of the customers are ____ holes. Thanks, Hank, for your help and patience.
I feel your pain, man, I really do. That is why I am working 3 jobs. I really don't know what to say on this one, especially without being able to see it. But I would suspect that the most likely issue is that half the magnet may be glued in backwards. I don't see how it could be in the wrong place. And the customers that your wife has to deal with is exactly why I wouldn't last 5 minutes in that job. I wouldn't even try to hold my tongue. But believe me, I get plenty of them here.
Hank, one more question and I promise to end this and pay you, with tip 2. Is it possible that the crack in the one magnet is causing either a partial disconnect of current or maybe even arcing into the flywheel itself? I am thinking this because 5 volts is getting to the coil. Checked wiring today and wiring is in perfect shape. I am thinking if magnets are placed correctly, then it must be that crack in the one magnet. What do you think?
The magneto is nothing more than a mini generator. All it does is make electricity, which is sent to the coil to be magnified. There is not current flowing through the magnet, so it will not be arcing to the flywheel. A partial disconnect of current is not going to happen, either. As long as the magnets were aligned with opposite poles to each other, there will only be one field around them. As long as that field is passing by the magneto, it will create current. But if the distance between the magnets and flywheel, air gap, is too great, there will only be a small voltage produced. If the magnets were not placed with opposite poles facing each other, then I am not really sure what would happen, but strongly suspect that the opposing fields would pretty much cancel each other out, and create harmonic distortion in the output of the magneto.
If you have a home improvement or appliance question and want to chat with an expert now, visit justanswer.com/ythi.